Do not need an AI companion. Cool. All right. Well, thanks everyone for coming online today, and welcome to day one of the PyHC Fall 2025 meeting. A little different this year. We're starting on a Tuesday instead of a Monday. Just with everything and all the meetings going on right now, I figured a 3-day instead of a 4-day meeting would be a little bit more refreshing for folks. So trying this format out this year. Not a whole lot of things to say from me. I didn't prepare a slide deck this year because it's kind of the same every year. Basically, just be kind during the meetings, follow our code of conduct, and unless you're talking, keep yourself muted. If the presenter is open to people jumping in whenever, feel free. Otherwise, raise your hand and we'll get to you. I do have a general notes doc going if you'd like to add notes as we listen to presentations today. And that's about it. So we're going to start off first with various project updates. Alex Kufus is scheduled to then give us a USRSC meeting overview a little bit later. And towards the end, we'll have a few reminders of the various FEPs that we're going to be talking about and voting on come Friday. So first things first, we have SunPy. Shane Maloney, I see you're on right now.
Yep, I'm here. I'll just share my screen and get going, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. Hopefully you should see my screen now, or at least a portion of it.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep. Great. I think this is going to be a relatively short update. It's been relatively quiet on the SunPy side of things this year, I think, due to the government shutdown, and also just an awful lot of the core contributors have been busy with other things, and I just see a spelling mistake. Okay, I'll fix that afterwards. Um, but yeah, I guess big things since the spring meeting is that SunPy 7.1 should be out in the next few weeks. We're just about to do a feature freeze and a release candidate in the next few weeks. There were some major releases of SunRaster, which is the package for dealing with raster spectrogram data. And then there's been a lot of maintenance releases. I think an awful lot of this has been driven by Spec 0.0, so deprecation of old versions of NumPy, old versions of Python, etc. And that kicks off a whole chain of updates to all of our affiliated packages and so on. So that's the majority of those maintenance releases. I think maybe looking forward to what's coming in 7.0, SunPy 7.1. It's just a couple of notes, I guess, is that again, we've got some breaking changes because our minimum Python version is now 3.12. And similarly, various other minimum versions of our core dependencies have been bumped up as well, again, in line with Spec 0.0. So nothing too strange there. And we're removing some old deprecated code and that's been marked for deprecation for a long time now, far longer than it needed to. And then I guess, yeah, the fun stuff. This one isn't maybe so fun, but we have a new client in Fido. So Fido is SunPy's unified download interface, as I'm sure you may know. And SolarNet is a European project to provide API access to a lot of ground-based data. So obviously our space-based data is usually fairly well manicured in databases that we can search and download. However, our colleagues from ground-based observatories, it's not always as easy to have a single interface to download data from the various ground-based observatories. And SolarNet was this project to try and gather all of the ground-based observatories data and provide access to that in a unified way. And so someone contributed a SunPy client to this, so you can now go and search for ground-based data. So this is coming from, I can't remember what instrument. But again, it's just another nice client in our Fido ecosystem. This is a particularly nice example. There's no new code required for this example, but it's called a time distance plot. So on the left-hand side of the screen, you're seeing a full disk image of the sun, and there's a small little box which is zoomed in on the right-hand side of that plot, and you'll see some loops in EUV. This is EUV emission, and then there's a small blue line which is indicating a slit. And then what we do is we make a time distance plot of that slit over time. And that's what is shown on the right-hand side of the screen in these two plots. And what you're seeing here is basically oscillations. And you see them decay in a kind of an exponential decaying window. So there's some nice physics you can do about the type of waves or instabilities that are causing this. And there's two different approaches to this using the SunPy infrastructure. We can use reproject, where we actually reproject all of the data to a common kind of pixel grid, or we can just transform the plot coordinates essentially. And the bottom plot is just showing that there are differences between the two methods, but they both agree pretty well. And just a nice showcase of what you can do with the tools that are in SunPy, in particular reproject and our differential rotation stuff. This was actually an external, or I guess driven by an external request, and that was to be able to add Earth scale images to whatever data you want. And so now we have a nice example gallery that shows how you can add a properly scaled, at least to very decent accuracy, image of the Earth beside whatever solar features that you want to do. And again, this is just building on top of map and our coordinate transforms and matplotlib. Again, this isn't a nice user-facing thing, though. If you want to make animations or figures for public consumption, you can have a nice figure of Earth to scale, and you could probably extend this to other sizes as well, like states or countries, if you wanted to. And I said, that's really it from our side. We had our coordination meeting. It was held in London earlier on this year. An awful lot of that was focused on, we call it a refactor. It's not really a refactor anymore, but that's changing SunPy map to use NDCube as the backend. So currently map only really handles two spatial dimensions, and that's it. Whereas we have now a lot of data that requires extra dimensions, be that frequency, polarization, wavelength, or just more complicated data. And so we're rebuilding map on top of NDCube, and there was an awful lot of work done to try and get that over the line, and also decide about some semantic differences that NDCube has compared to the way map currently works and the way that we think map should work in the future. And that's really all I have from the SunPy side of things. And my Zoom window has decided to disappear. Bear with me 1 second. What's going on? There we go. Okay. So relatively short and sweet from SunPy this time around.
No, that's great. Very helpful. Does anyone have any questions or thoughts?
What's your funding look like for the next few years? Are you guys in
Good
pretty-
question. As always, no is the answer. So SunPy, the project, did have a B20 proposal that was funded. But I mean, if we're ever actually going to see that money, I'm not sure. And that would cover maintenance and some upgrades to time series, and I can't think of what else we put in that. Maybe map, about an FTE for 1 or 2 years, spread out between various different people. But other than that, we have no direct specific funding. It's all everyone's best effort as part of their day jobs, I guess. We are always looking and trying to find better funding to, actually pay people specifically to work on SunPy. But there's nothing very far along the pipes in that respect at the moment, unfortunately.
Okay. Yeah, if you do anything with time series stuff and you want to talk to the Happy team, we're always willing to try and learn more about how people are doing things, how we can interface with stuff to try and make smooth transitions between different APIs and services. So we're trying to get better at understanding that too. It's like we had this coordination project, adapters project a few years ago, but it was seriously underfunded and we didn't really get to closure where we wanted. So we may
Yeah, David.
that again.
David Sandby, who was part of this my project, did kind of started the work on going around the various different teams and asking them what they would like in a time series object, and then looking at, you know, what what's out there. Is it X-array? Is it AstroPy something or whatever? And trying to figure out, is there something that we could take and just use or integrate? But then that funding kind of ran out and he left. But hopefully, if the B20 money does come through, there is some portion of that that is specifically to try and improve our time series container within SunPy. And then obviously, if we have a better container, then we can try and interface with Happy and other things for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the idea is to make this all seamless to the scientists where they don't really care. They don't need to know about these different data models. They just need to know that they can get it into the thing that they want and it's just going to work. So that's kind of our vision for it too. And if it means adapting it into the SunPy ecosystem from a happy source, they won't even know.
Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I'm always impressed with how organized you guys are with SunPy, and you get contributions from people for free, and it's really working. So nice job.
Yeah, I think at least two of those contributions were from potential GSOC students. I'd have to go back and double check, but yeah, so we do seem to get a good few external pull requests, even if a lot of them are one-time only committers, which is we probably need to work on our retention rates of keeping people who make a first pull request to try and keep making more.
Free donut with every pull request.
Not a bad idea.
Lovely. Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and get to the next one. Thanks, Sean or Shane. Sorry, Sean, I just saw you like put your.
And then there you go. I sabotaged you. Not a question, but just a comment before we leave. Thanks for calling out the Spec Zero version bumps in SunPy, and thanks SunPy for always being one of the leaders in that. At some point during this meeting, I'll be talking about FEP3, which is going to be getting PyHC to formally adopt Spec Zero, and all of our packages will be on the same version update schedule, and that's going to be helpful. So, yep, thanks.
Definitely. All right, Jim, I see that you're on. Would you like to go ahead and take the floor?
Sure thing. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. Okay, let's get into. All right, so I hope you all can see that.
Yep.
So, yeah, so a few updates. What's been going on with PySpeed since the last time we met. And the biggest news, and we've been saying we're going to do this, seems like forever, but we finally did get PySpeed 2.0 out the door with some pretty significant reorganizations. PyTplot is no longer an external package. We've merged that code all into PySpeed proper. So that had been an ongoing source of confusion because there was a package named PyTplot. It was like an older version based on Qt. And then and that's not the one that PySpeed was using. We were using a matplotlib based package, PyTplot MPL temp. And so it's very easy for people to break their PySpeed installation by, pip installing or pip updating the wrong package. So that is now absorbed into PySpeed. We rearranged our imports a little bit. We put all our mission-specific code into a PySpeed-projects module, just to make it clear, make it a little easier to navigate the directory structure. And so we actually implemented that several versions ago, but we had some backward compatibility hacks that we were using so that people were not forced to update their user side code. And so we took the opportunity of a major version release to go ahead and make the compatibility breaking changes and remove those hacks so that going forward, um, you're supposed to import the mission specific stuff from PySpeedS.projects. And we also cleaned up some of the parameter names were inconsistent with each other and with IDL speed-S. So we made a pass over everything and sort of settled on some consistent choices. And that's another area where we had some backward compatibility hacks that we supported both versions for a while, but now we're users are expected to use the consistent names going forward. We also took some of the dependencies and made them optional extras, in particular the base map, Virus client, and MTH5 packages. And they were all sort of problematic in certain ways, either in terms of having like restrictive version requirements that were sort of prone to conflicts with other packages, or especially on Macs. And there were not wheels for some older versions of Mac OS for some of those, and they didn't pip install cleanly. They were rather challenging to build. So just for better onboarding experience, since most people probably won't have a need for those packages, we made those extras. So if you just do pip install PySpeedS, you get more of the core routines, and then optionally you can install those and still get them. Our Python version requirement to 3.10 or later. And as far as 3.14, base map still doesn't support that yet, as far as I know, with a wheel. But the rest of PySpeedS has been tested and does work well under Python 3.14. And we wrote a migration guide for PySpeedS 2.0 just to tell people what changes they'll have to make in their user code to adapt to the new way of doing things. And this is late breaking news. As of like 10 o'clock last night, we have Zenodo records and DOIs now for PySpeedS. So next order of business for me will be to update the HSSI records for PySpeedS. And I updated the Zenodo record for IDL speed-S. So now those two are linked to each other as I think we use the is supplement to relation to sort of connect those in the metadata. So I'm very glad to have that in place. We haven't automated the process of managing the DOIs yet, but that'll come a little bit later because, as you might know, I've sort of a bee in my bonnet about getting that to work with the Zenodo GitHub integration. So we're not quite there yet. So these Zenodo releases were made manually. Few other recent updates, enhancements, bug fixes. In our routines to do moments from 3D particle distributions, we added a bunch of new outputs, particular heat flux and temperature tensor outputs. For our file downloading, we made it a little more robust. We added some cooldown intervals so we don't make bursts of rapid fire requests to the same server. And we added some retry logic in case something times out or fails. We'll do a limited number of retries. And that's made our downloads a lot more stable. Like we were, for some data sources, we were actually triggering some rate limits. And it was just causing us lots of problems. So that seems much better now. We have better wildcard support for PySpeedS routines that can take multiple tplot variables and operate on them in one call. That's something that's been around for a long time in IDL speed-S, and that tends to sort of trip people up transitioning to PySpeed-S. We've made some changes to our CDF to T-plot variable conversion, just to be more accepting of variables that had slight metadata problems. So we really do try our best to make sensible variables out of them if there are problems. Bob Weigel pointed out that we had a bug in our geographic to GSM magnetic coordinate transform. And this is when if you processed a time span of data that was greater than a year, there was a small bug in that routine that was messing up the coordinate transforms. So thanks for him for pointing that out to us. We did get that fixed. We ported a bunch of wavelet analysis routines from IDL. And then on the developer side of things, we've restructured things a bit. We're trying to standardize our development practices and bring things up to date with more modern Python. We're now using PDM and UV to manage our dependencies in our development environment. So we have some additional developer dependency groups for linters, build tools, Sphinx, various test tools. And most of our tool configurations have been moved into pyproject.toml, wherever that's supported. We're working on some PySpeed-S developer guides showing like the extra steps you have to go through to set up a viable development environment and sort of what our project best practices are for that. We actually found a bug in PDM as we were writing up the user guides. It has to do with its UV support for Conda environments on Windows. And it was overwriting an environment variable with an incorrect value. Has to do with how it identifies the top level directory of your Python environment. So one of our developers actually narrowed that down to the exact line of code in PDM that needed to be fixed. So we've got a pull request in the works to pass that fix back upstream. That was kind of interesting. And then still to do, we want to add pre-commit hooks to enforce our style guidelines, prevent committing large files to the repo, that sort of stuff. And I think with all these changes, we're probably pretty close to being ready to get evaluated by PyOpenSci. So that would be nice to have under our belt. And then for future developments, we're going to apply some lessons we learned from the last PyHC summer school and from some UCLA classes that used PySpeed-S. One is that it is for some of the plots we want to make, like orbit plots, we have to drop down a matplotlib, whereas IDL Speed-S has some nice prepackaged routines for that. So that made it really hard to teach. And I'm talking about, like, this is one from the summer school, orbit plots with several missions. And then we've got the magnetopause boundary plotted on there for a few different dynamic pressure values. And then some other types of non-time series plots, like this is a cluster formation plot with a couple of vectors overplotted on it. And then this is a hodogram where we're projecting a magnetic field vector for a short time interval, projecting it onto the minimum variance IJ plane. So those are all, they're not all that complicated to do, but just the need to have to explain matplotlib calls. It's just, we really need to package those up in some prepackaged routines. So that's a big change we want to make. We also discovered that we need a much cleaner interface to the GeoPack package for doing magnetic field modeling. And especially, there's a lot of cleanup and sanitization steps that the user has to go through to get everything like the positions and the solar wind parameters, it all interpolated onto a calm time base and get rid of NaN values and so forth. So that was another thing that was kind of complicated to teach. And so we're going to add some convenience routines, make things a little bit more automated where we can. And we also are working to implement field line traces. That's another feature. It's not fully supported by the Python Geopack package. Uh, so we're hoping we can get Haye Korth, who wrote the IDL Geopack library. We're hoping to get him to make public some of his changes that he made to Sigonenko's original code so that we can port those over to Python. Um, yeah, so that's basically it for PySpeedS. So open to questions if anybody has any.
Just to comment, I know Haya, so if you want to try to leverage that connection and have me put a bug in his ear or something, just send me an email or set up a Zoom or something. I can try to help because he might not be so familiar with navigating the open source process at APL, but we can absolutely help him with that.
Mhm. Yeah, thanks for offering. I did. We don't want to badger him too much about this all at the same
Right,
time.
right. But I can.
Okay. Yeah, I'll keep that in mind. Thanks
Yeah.
for that.
No, I mean, I'll try to do it tactfully, right? And not,
Yeah.
but we can offer to help him too in our group. We can say, look, just give this to us. We'll do it. He may have not.
Yeah, I think he's been maybe a little bit hesitant because I know he's really super busy right now and doesn't have like he's basically maintaining Geopack on a volunteer basis. And he probably is a little worried that he's going to have to do a lot of hand holding to show us how to build it and test it and all that. But we think we can do that with hopefully a minimum amount of hassle to him.
Okay. If you want me to help out, just send me a note.
Okay, thanks, John.
Mhm.
Nick also offered some help setting up a pre-commit config for PySpeedS if you.
Oh, thanks, Nick. Yeah, I'd really like to hear if you have any experiences to share in that. I'll maybe uh, ping you offline for that.
Sounds good. Um, I think also Shane offered a SunPy package that might be of use to you if you want to look in the chat after.
Okay, will do. Thanks.
Thanks again, Jim.
Okay.
All right, John Niehoff, you are up for a SpacePy update.
Sorry,
Oh, wait, go ahead, Sean.
Yep. Jim, I just wanted to know if is PyTplot still going to be maintained going forward in the future? And should it even remain a PyHC package if not?
Uh, I know that the matplotlib version is not, that's a dead end at this point. We'll keep, of course, it'll stay indexed on PyPI just for people who haven't upgraded to PySpeed S2 yet. But we do have some plans to sunset that one. And I think after talking with Brian Harder, I think the original PyTplot uh, I know it hasn't been updated for maybe 2 years now, so we might want to sunset that one as well, and just maybe put out one last version on PyPI and have some like in the init.py have some messages that if you want this capability, the best way to get it is via PySpeedS. And sort of
Gotcha.
gently, not pull a rug out from under people, but make sure that if they do try to use it, that they're aware that PySpeedS is out there and includes those features now.
All right, cool. Good to know. Thank you.
Now you're up, John. And you're on mute. You are muted.
yeah, the problem is as soon as I start sharing something, Zoom took away my ability to unmute or do anything else. So give me just a moment. I'll get my slides.
Sure thing.
Zoom just does not do it. Okay, so hopefully this is visible. And yeah, so this is myself and Dan, and Steve was officially not an author just by sake of not having been able to go through Los Alamos review. So quick update, because it was a fairly slow year. We haven't had a release in a year. The nice thing about that is that's proven that the forward compatible wheels work, because the binary wheels still work on things that versions of Python that didn't exist when the last release happened, so that's good. And part of the reason this being a slow year is both myself and Dan have been really tied into mission work. And as with everybody else, we're tied to this vicious cycle of funding uncertainties. So on the funded work, I haven't been able to bring students on because literally I haven't gone from week to week if I have money for them. And so the load of the load for everything just winds up on the principals, and so we just don't have the ability to push that forward. And obviously, as we all know, there's less time to write proposals for fewer opportunities. So gripe over. One really great thing that happened, thanks to Dan and University of Michigan, is we did a 2-part hackathon that was hybrid, and that was done with funding from Michigan. They did internal funding to do this, both to push PyBats forward and also to get some ideas for how to run hackathons. So we had 25 participants. We had a lot of students involved, spent a lot of time just sitting and writing. And so the end result is we got several pull requests that are open, and we're actually iterating on reviewing them. And hopefully that will result in some more stuff. Hitting the code base, but also having more folks who can develop routinely, particularly on PyBats, which is an important module that needs a lot of work. And so that's part of why the release hasn't happened yet. Once we get the hackathon inputs in, I'll be trying to cut a release as soon as possible. And one of the other things coming out of this is Dan's putting together a white paper on how this hackathon went. And so hopefully that will be useful for other folks in PyHC. And Michigan is actually hoping to do this fairly regularly for a variety of software that is valuable to their research. As I said, slow year, and that shows up in the numbers. 13 commits hit Maine in the last year. But it includes one person who was their first commit, so that was nice. And then single digit to double digit issues in PRs. So that's what's going on. The good news, of course, is that none of the developers got furloughed or laid off in the shutdown, but that also meant we didn't have the spare time to work on it. So I'm hoping that for all of us, we're going to have a little bit more certainty going forward, being taken things. So that's what I've got, and now I'm going to do another dance of trying desperately to get Zoom to give me people's faces back.
Awesome. Oh, John Vandergriff, you took your video on. Go ahead.
Yeah, we did this adapters project a few years ago, John. And if we got more money, would you have somebody to put at that? I mean, the funding is gone, so I'm not asking for anything. So
Yeah. Honestly, I would hope to be able to put myself at it at some point as well. We've got open PRs from Sandy and Jeremy that honestly do not do a lot of work to push over the line.
right. No, we bit off more than we could chew on that one, but
Yeah.
so okay.
But yeah, absolutely. Funding would be nice, but not absolutely necessary, I'd say. But on the other hand, I haven't gotten to the last couple of years, so
Yeah, no, I mean it needs to be funded. It's we can't be doing volunteer stuff.
yeah.
I
No,
mean,
I've
for something like that's a kind of it needs to be a curated, monitored, tested. I think
And I think that's the type of thing where if we had the funding, being able to bring a student on for the summer would probably work out reasonably well.
Yeah.
It's just been, I haven't been able to maintain a pool of students because it's literally been one student rotates off and I can go and try to hire another student and say, well, we may or may not have a stop work on this project in the next week.
Yeah. Not a great summer job.
No, no.
Okay.
But yeah, definitely be open.
Any other comments or questions?
All right, thanks, folks.
Yeah, thanks, John. All right. Darren, I believe you are up now.
Hey. Let's
Hello.
see. Oh, that's not yeah. All right, is that showing right?
Yep.
Okay. All right, I'll go over some updates. Komodo team is primarily Lutz and myself doing what we can to keep things moving forward. This first slide, I'll just leave it on there. It's just you all have seen this before. I'm not going to go over that at all, but just kind of what Komodo is, but just to include it so that this talk is not taken totally out of context by other people. But if I jump into the updates, again, as with both packages, there's a lot of bug fixes. And I was reminded of an old saying, we're eating our own dog food, which means we use what we develop. And so we've made extensive use of Komodo internally, and that's helping us find the weird odd edge cases and the odd things that always pop up. We have added ionosphere support for OpenGGCM model output. Our Lutz went to an OpenGGCM meeting, and there was a request then to add that functionality, and so we added that into Komodo as well. File driver code, I've mentioned that, I think probably at the last meeting, that was being developed by Josh Pettit. It was a separate tool kind of tied into it, but now that code has been fully integrated into Komodo and is now part of the package and goes along with it as well. So that has been finished, especially since Josh has moved on to other projects as well. We wanted to make sure we grabbed that before he was completely done with this. Another update, we have open space exports. So open space is a different open source tool to do rendering and visualizations of the whole all of space basically, and you can render anything. So there are a lot of things. It's used extensively in planetariums and things like that to show space and fly through space. And so we can now take surfaces and lines that we can create in Komodo and export them into a unique format that OpenSpace needs to ingest them and display them. And we're hoping in the not too distant future to make this an API call where OpenSpace can request surfaces that then get it computed and extracted and pull in to a visualization or display that they're working on. We've also done some work on improving more intelligent file loading. Often, when we're reading output from a code, there's a lot of other stuff that sits in those directories, and occasionally those files look similar enough to an input file but don't contain input data, and things can break. And so we've done a lot of cleanup on being more selective about which files include there. And then one other thing that we found is that some models sometimes vary how they store their output. So for example, a particular model of the ionosphere that might have longitude from -180 to 180, well, sometimes they'll skip the final 180 because it's the same as the first -180, and so they want to save file size. But sometimes they will write it, and so that change in logic changes how we have to read the file, and so we've now got corrections in there. We've also found one model that
Sometimes we'll write out dimensionalized variables, and sometimes we'll write out non-dimensionalized variables. And so again, detecting which type was written out, then we can then convert and load things properly to make the right get the right result out of things. We've added some new plot options in Komodo. So polar cap boundary detection. So with the SWMFIE, when you're doing the a polar plot of the ionosphere output, we could now directly capture the open closed field line boundaries and display them on there. And this is a particular unique one in the middle of a storm going off where you actually got multiple regions of open closed boundaries. And then also a what we call a stretched cutout plot. And so this is where we actually, in this case, take a GitHub result. We've stretched the altitude by a factor of 6 to allow you to see the altitude variation within a global picture of the results, and then choose where you want your window to be cut out and focused on. And so these plots were I had made a demo of that for somebody, and then we got some requests to make them routinely available. And so now they're plots that can be made directly from the web page using Komodo in the back end to create these more advanced plotting tools. One other thing that we added recently was a nearest time loading. So typically when Komodo is reading files that are one file per time, it was reading basically a time before and a time after, because the time you're plotting might vary a little bit around that. And it was doing time interpolation, which is the most flexible and powerful, because you don't know whether I'm asking for an interpolation right on a file time or just near it, and then you need those files before and after. But we found that some when you're actually making plots and you're asking for a plot directly where the file is, that was extra work. And so now we've added an option to only grab the file closest to the time you want to interpolate at, and that has, as expected, improved the interpolation time from Komodo by about a factor of 2.5. So especially when we're doing a batch run of a whole sequence of these, that can really add up and make a difference. We've also added a vector field tracer to Komodo. Can trace any 3D vector. Includes a calculation to do the last closed field line. Uses a modern adaptive step size algorithm, and partly why we developed this ourselves from scratch rather than a package, because this is primarily using SWMF output, which is an unstructured grid, and so that changes how you do your calculations. So rather than interpolating onto a regular grid and throwing it at a ray tracer that way, we actually made a process where every point when it's trying to calculate that field line, it is going back to the interpolator and getting that value. And so we've really worked to optimize that. And so this is has reasonable performance actually for a code written purely in Python. We've got an older code that we have sometimes used that was written in C, that lets us use for a tool that was tied to IDL. That's a little bit faster, but this is far more flexible for us and how we use it inside Komodo. We also added an option for dark mode plots. So we're starting to create more graphics that are used in other tools. And some of those tools have a dark mode option to create the plots with more of a black background rather than the white background. And so I've added functionality to automatically convert visuals into a dark mode, which tends to highlight the plot and diminish some of all the text that flows around a lot of plots sometimes. And so that's something new that we've added as well. And again, like everyone's packages so far, time and resources have been limited, even getting more so with shrinking budgets and shrinking manpower. But we're doing what we can with it. Again, new features have been driven by what people need out of this, and we're hoping in the near future to be able to have more time for more infrastructure maintenance and to clean up some loose ends that we haven't been able to get to for a while. So I'll leave it there. All right, where's my sim screen go?
Oh, I see. Nick, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was wondering what the status is of NumPy 2.0 support for Komodo.
That is high on our to-do list, but not yet there.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Yeah, that switch to 2.0 is a pain.
It is, and it just and it's they're starting to pile up because there are other things that then it's growing. The list was just it started with that, and now it's 5 or 6 packages that I need to do that same thing for, and so it is definitely on our list, and we can't wait too much longer. It's fallen too far behind. So
All right, thanks.
am I still sharing screen? I don't know how to stop that. Where did my menu go?
I think here. Replace current
Yeah.
share.
There you go. If you can take it away from me.
And then
Perfect.
also
Perfect. Thank you.
being
They
shared.
keep moving the menus for those things, and I don't know. Crazy.
They like to make it. Oops, I just deleted a plot I had of you. They like to make that difficult. Any other thoughts or comments? That dark mode edition is really cool, by the way.
Yeah, it was kind of fun. And in fact, I was playing with things and actually did a little bit of Google searching. When I first did the plot, I did the blue red, right, which is what you would normally do. The plot is in blue red, but when you go dark mode, red is too close to black. And so I found a place that said, well, it's better to go to orange, and it's better for colorblind people to switch to orange. So a blue orange had kind of a double win-win right on that. So it was kind of a fun little side quest to figure out how to do that dark mode stuff. So
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, it looks like I don't see Angeline online right now. I'll ping her. But in the meantime, John Vandegrift, would you like to go ahead with the happy update?
Sure. Yeah, I can start that. Let me get the screen share going here. Okay, does that show full screen?
Sure does.
Okay. So this is similar to what was presented at Dash, but I'm trying to focus it more on what can we talk about together as PyHC community for things that might overlap with what the Happy team is doing. This is a little bit different in that the Happy developers are primarily, well, not, we focus first on the spec and getting that right, and then the component that's in the PyHC, the Python piece, that's kind of flows from the spec. So here's the outline. What is Happy? I'm really going to skip that very quickly. Latest updates, go into a few more details than I did at Dash, and then the directions thing. So here's the what is Happy slide. It's basically this request and response specification, and that really just is a specification. It's not really software. It's just a document that describes what needs to happen for that. And then the part that's in the PyHC is this Python library that implements that on the client side to facilitate making a request and receiving the response. And just like Darren, I put some other slides in here for context. I'm not really going to go over these because you have happy servers and you have happy enabled clients that use the library, but we're not going to focus on that. So here's an updated chart. Since Dash, there's 200 less data sets available in Happy. So things are coming and going, I guess. CEDA has a few less. A couple people had a few more. So anyway, uh, but anyway, people are still using it. And then I wanted to point out too that, this is partly driven by Bob Weigel and his interest in ground magnetometer data, but all the three major ground magnetometer data centers now use Happy. It's interesting to point out that the way that they present their data in Happy is similar because we kind of helped them with that, but not identical. So the data structures that you get back, or the tables that you get back in the Happy data stream, they're similar. They'll be recognizable, but they're not absolutely computer compatible. The data structures are not the same. So more comments on that later, but it's so we may have some future work here to try and figure out ways to directly compare all of these. Okay, so in addition to the ones on that table, there are some other Happy servers that are in development. The Madrigal one, there was a presentation on that at Dash. I'm going to mention it again here later. The NOAA SWPC folks, that's a Space Weather Prediction Center, they use Happy internally. They were really impressed with this visualization tool developed by someone else to look at Happy data. And so they switched to using Happy internally so they could use that tool. And the folks at University of Calgary that have an amazing array of observational material data, they're going to use Happy for some of their time series stuff, mostly like their ionospheric sounding stuff. And then Darren and other folks at CCMC are using Happy to be able to access things internally and look at a whole bunch of different things. So, oh, John's comment about, yeah, it's hard to think of data sets that are more similar than ground magnetometers. Yes, but the way people present it, even what is a data set to them and how they capture the things and what's considered together, people will do all kinds of stuff. And so getting people to agree even on magnetometer representations and what coordinate systems and how to explain that, it's surprisingly difficult.
Oh
I mean,
yeah,
most,
John. I'm not trying to ding you or
oh,
those
I know, I
teams.
know.
It's just like whenever some are like, why can't we have all the data look exactly the same? It's like, well, it's it's
That's
hard.
because people developed it in isolation. They didn't really
Yeah.
consider this. They did what exactly made sense to them at the time, and they may or may not have had much of a data science background or experience, and you know, it just ended up being kind of arbitrary. So yeah, we got to face that. Okay, features in Happy 3.3 that just came out. It's fully backwards compatible with 3.2. We do have ways to specify the location. This was super useful for the ground magnetometer stuff. Like, and this is a per data set location. So you can indicate geolocation with latitude and longitude or any other kind of specification. And then in we have a vector quantity where you can specify different components. And again, that's another place where people use all kinds of different representations for vector quantities, either like a spacecraft position or a magnetometer vector or something. So we added another item to the list of allowed component pieces, one being altitude. And then Rebecca and Zach pushed us in the direction to support open science. They did kind of an analysis of Happy to help us with this and made some suggestions. And so we've implemented those. You can put a server citation um, in one of the endpoints and dataset citations, and then resource IDs and provenance and other things that support uh, open science kind of communications. And then, yeah, we're working on some unit stuff. The units thing it's larger than Happy, but we're trying to support what's out there now. So we added another capability to say VO units. And then let's see, there's other things. I don't want to go through all these little minor fixes and clarifications. This is just telling you that we are paying attention to what's in the spec and we are trying to make sure that corner cases or when people read it, it's absolutely definitive. Not quite legalese language, but something where a developer could read it and know, oh, I know how to implement this. So, okay, future development directions. And this is kind of where I wanted to spend most of the time and also kind of just open it up for feedback or discussion. But we would like to add another endpoint, optional endpoint to the Happy server spec that lets people express linkages between data sets. I've got a couple more slides about that, so I'll just keep going through the list here. And we want to support this Happy to Space adapter project that's coming online at the Madrigal database or data center. So those two topics I have further slides on. The rest of these I'll just read. We are looking at now enabling a search capability across all known Happy servers. right now, the names that show up for data sets, they're just whatever people gave them. And so if you're looking for a specific thing, that's now a long list to search through. And some data centers have thousands of options. So we need to think a little bit more about the search capability. We never put that in the beginning because we were not supposed to be competing with Space for the search option. But now that there's so many things available and happy that there needs to be some kind of way to search through it. So we want to continue with promulgation and support of new adopters. If people are interested in picking up Happy, part of our mantra or part of our mandate really is to work with those people, help them get up the learning curve. We are still interested in doing a generic server. That's kind of been on the list for a while, but large data centers just generally do things themselves. But it's the smaller providers that we're going to go after with this generic data server. And then it's these really cool display clients that have been drawing more and more people into Happy. So there's other ones we could develop. I've been talking for a while about a data amalgamator or, some more visualization capabilities, and then continued fusion and interoperability with the other packages. And we tried this before, but we just, like I said, we were underfunded. And then there's going to be new programming languages come online, and we want to fully support those as people start using them. So, okay, these two that are starred, I'm going to talk about them a little more. So the linkages between data sets. The motivation was that one of the people using Happy heavily developed a really neat client that communicated a few extra things about the data that it was offering. So the server could communicate, hey, I have this data set at a very high cadence, and I also have other data sets at lower cadences. And that way, the display client that's looking at this server, if you start zooming out in time, you go from, say, looking at a 1 day plot to maybe a 2 month plot. It doesn't try to load the 1 second data anymore or the 5 second data. It moves to hourly data or something automatically because it was told by the Happy server, hey, I have all these different cadences. It detected that and it automatically switches to a different cadence based on what the user is doing. And the way that this got added to the server was through a legitimate extension mechanism that we have included in the spec. They added some keywords, they followed the rules. And so we thought this was a really great idea. And a lot of people were saying, oh, yeah, I would totally use that. So we want to generalize this. And it opened a whole can of worms because there's other things besides cadences that you might want to connect. So, you know, uh, having a machine readable, scientifically useful connection between all these different things. Yes, cadence is one. Coordinate frames. Oh, these are in different reference frames. So here we can show these two different, projections of this data, or here's the regular data, the raw data, and here's the background subtracted data, or hey, here's another copy of this data. Boy, it'd be nice to compare and see, do these actually agree? So all these kinds of connections, it would be nice to do that. So we're working with some people on developing a standard representation. These are your sort of prototypical ontological triples. Um, A relates to B, and so the nouns and verbs that you have in these kinds of linkages or these types of connections, those should really come from standard sets of nouns and verbs that people are using to describe science data. So that's a whole new field for us. We're exploring that with Baptiste Ciccone, who has been helping us with it. They recently hired somebody who is an expert in ontologies and some of the techniques that are used to express these kinds of relationships. And so we're definitely working with them. But yeah, so expect maybe in the next year or so another endpoint with this linkages thing. We may try to express the linkages endpoint fully in terms of these other um, standards, or we may try to just have it super compact and then have the ability to also show it as this other standard. We haven't really decided on that yet. So, okay. And the other thing about Madrigal, this was a new project. It was described at the Dash meeting. We're pretty excited about this. This is a case where another project proposed and got lots of money to do a Happy and Space capability at a large data center. This is the Madrigal data center. This serves thousands of products to the CDAR community in NSF. CDAR is the coupling energetics and dynamics of atmospheric regions. It's really upper atmospheric science, studied mostly from the ground, some from space. But they have a lot of uniform kind of data. They curate it on the way in. It's not as formal a process as, say, like the planetary data system where you have to go through reviews and very specific things, but they work with every single provider as data comes in to try and make sure it meets their metadata requirements. And so they got funding for 3 years, and their first step is build a happy server. And then now that everything that they offer will be described by happy metadata, the next stage would be take that happy metadata and map it to a space record for each of their data products. And to do that in a way where it's kind of automatic, and also they want to do it in a way that's generic so that other people who have a happy server could easily also create space records. So the Happy team is very interested in supporting that. Um, and so we're going to work with them to get that all working and integrated. So we're hoping they'll be willing to sort of develop that in a Happy repo, but it doesn't have to be that way. But we're offering to help, and they've already contacted us to set up a meeting in January. So we're pretty psyched about that. Okay, Happy and PyHC. So there are things that are larger than Happy that we just want to keep a pulse on the community for in terms of, Happy would like to be able to express what the units something is in, and it'd be great if we could agree on ways to do that that were standardized. Same for coordinate systems. And a lot of this was presented at Dash by Bob Weigel, so I'm just kind of mentioning that here as well. The other thing that I would like to see is for us to develop some sort of modularized visualization capabilities. A lot of the larger or semi-large projects, I guess, they come out with visualization capabilities, but it's a whole tool chain where to get this visualization, you really have to install the whole package and do the whole thing. It'd be nice if, like, a time series plot isn't super complicated. It would be nice if there was a package that had that capability that was sort of independent. And then that might require a lot of other little modules that were also fully independent to support this kind of package. I know we talked about ad nauseum about time handling, and that caused a big kerfuffle. But we could try to visit that again. Or there's other things too that might be easier, time ticks for the axes, or um, even just visualization packages. Like I say, they're not part of an entire application. They're just kind of a standalone thing. Hey, meet this data model and provide this data, and then you can make a plot. So these capabilities are around, and they're in various packages, and they're not super reusable. So people just keep, even there was a new one, even a project from APL for a modeling display capability, and they just develop everything from scratch again. So it's like, it would be really great to see if somehow the PyHC could foster or push for or help support some modular display components. And then the happy amalgamator, I'll stop mentioning that because I keep talking about it all the time. So other things like we saw, okay, even the mag data is expressed differently in happy tables. So maybe there are ways we could come up with schemas for things that says, oh, if you meet this schema, then there's a way to make data look the same even if it came from different sources. So I'm going to actually edit this real quick. Can you still see my screen? That one was not supposed to be there.
You can still see it.
Okay. Yeah, so there's some non-science things like event lists, file listings, data availability. The event list concept was pretty popular at Dash. Like, yes, wouldn't it be great if we had a semantically uniform way of expressing event lists? But there's other things, file listings and availability. But then science data types like the magnetometer data, they all, these providers have it, but it's different. And so why stop with mag data, right? Maybe there's other kinds of things that we could express. So that's basically it. If you have any input on any of these things, or you want to try out Happy or you want to show us something or learn something, come talk to us. We meet on Mondays at noon. And then I had one walk-on topic, if that's okay.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead.
Okay. At Dash, people talked about having a tools or tutorial day at the GEM meeting, or maybe even other ones like CEDAR and Shine. So the GEM meeting was just announced as being in Portland, Maine in July. So we would like to try to have a tutorial day at GEM this year. I'm just trying to collect interest. I'd like to email them in the next few days to say, hey, could you support a tools or tutorial day? We'd ask for a side room and just advertise, okay, there's like a morning session where people give brief intro talks, and then the rest of the day, people will just be there. You could show up and learn about or get a demonstration or try it out for various tools. So email me if you want to participate in that. I know the SpeedOS folks have done a kind of bang up job being there and helping people come up to speed on things. So we're trying to follow that model, get into the meetings where the scientists are, but then offer that as a capability or a slot, have that as something there for any of these tools and capabilities that are out there. That's almost like a mini version of the summer school, but just more focused on awareness and getting people up that first part of the learning curve. So that was it for me.
I'll start off with a question here.
Sure.
Um, so you mentioned a couple times that people have been happy with some visualization capabilities, and I didn't catch, is that all being built into the Happy Plot package, or do you have like a separate project spinning up for that?
Yeah, Happy Plot is really just a demonstration capability. It's not really meant as a uh, full analysis, you know, plotting package.
Yeah.
So this is what I was referring to here. This is developed by the Dutch Meteorological Institute, KNMI. This is Ilko Doornbos. He
Oh
has,
yeah, I'm familiar with him.
yeah,
Yeah. He's
yeah,
been
yeah,
working on this for years.
right. So he has a very nice interactive um, stackable time series plotting capability, and a lot of people are using it. He developed this fully independently from us. He has open sourced it, but it can work with any Happy server.
Okay, nice, nice. Cool.
Any other questions or comments for John? Cool. Yeah, some interesting thoughts about creating those modular components for visualizations. I'm not sure of the best way for us to encourage that. Do you have thoughts, John? Because I mean, there's obviously some barriers like funding to do it, et cetera, et cetera.
Right, yeah. I mean, if if that could be, I don't know if we create like wanted ads for HC or looking for, or if we try to influence the AO that funds the opportunities, or if we just try to talk to Brian and say, look, can you create a funding option for this? Or, how is it that we can make some of the components that we're developing, um, you know, more kind of like cross project or something? I mean, yeah, I see a lot of really cool visualizations, and then it's like, oh man, to use that, I got to import all this stuff, and it changes my dependency tree, and I got to meet a data model that I'm not familiar with. So it's yeah. I mean, our needs are a little bit specific. We're always looking for easy, simple ways to visualize happy data. So for us to be able to do that in multiple different platforms, we always have to learn the totally different new stack.
John, I think that's like there's the question of okay, the dependency stack so much, but there's also the like, okay, given that you have a package with a certain capability, how much do you have to buy into their
Yeah,
means of doing things? Like,
right.
because I can say, okay, maybe it's a bit of an obstacle. Pip install a gigantic thing that I'm not going to use. That's not as a huge problem if when I pip install the entire gigantic stack, I don't need to understand the entire gigantic stack.
Right.
So that might be like a first step, is to look around capabilities that we have in all of our existing packages and say, what's the barrier to entry here? Can we lower that barrier? And then maybe that will start to suggest, maybe at some point it goes, oh, you know what? This thing has now become sufficiently independent that it makes sense to take it out.
Yeah, it's a separable piece. People are using it independently, and it's worth the effort to kind of excise it and make it its own independent thing. That would be great. Yeah, that's a kind of organic way of doing it.
Yeah. Or maybe people go, you know what? We're using it and we're not really caring about everything else that comes along with it. So it's not worth excising it. We'll just all use it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I
So
mean, the dependency thing, bringing in all these other packages, then it's like, because you see on SunPy, here's what we're compatible with. You have to have this version of that thing, and there's that list. So that the simpler you can keep that, the easier it is for people going forward to use all these different ones. And Sean knows all about that, having tried to find the magical set for everybody.
Do we want to have more time, apart from like the next few minutes in this fall meeting, to think about and consider how we could actually push that forward? Is this something we want PyHC to focus on?
Yeah, that's a legitimate question. I'm suggesting it, but I'm not trying to force it in on the agenda.
Yeah, I'm curious to hear others' thoughts on if this is where we should spend our more immediate future efforts, or a nice to have goal that we can talk more about at the next meeting. Or
yeah, this feels like another angle on what we keep on circling around, which is interdependent, interoperability versus one package to rule them all versus all that. And I, it feels we often try to come in with one big solution, and nobody's gonna be surprised by this. I'm a gradualist, right? But I would love for us to keep nibbling at this problem. Um, and maybe Johnny said easy, applying visualization capabilities. Maybe that's something we should do. Identify where we have visualization, identify how usable it is, how to get the data in, right? Just look at what we got, look at how to make that easy.
Right. Yeah, it would really take a dedicated effort just at first assessing it, but then, finding things. Oh, here's this Komodo display that's really cool, or here's this new thing in PySpeedos. How can we make those? Can we make those an independent thing that anybody could just say, "Ooh, I want to make that kind of plot. I'll just pull in that specific piece." So if you haven't designed it that way ahead of time, that actually can be difficult. Um, So trying it with a few small ones first to say, all right, let's pull this out. That one's a really useful one, or that's super generic. This does spectrograms. Spectrograms are hard enough where it's like, well, it'd be nice if there was one that we could just pull in, like, okay, a line plot, okay, that's not too hard, but spectrograms with like some other stuff, I don't know. Just thinking out loud still.
I like that idea. And just, yeah, maybe this is something to think about at future meetings, like the next one, maybe a little hackathon where people just go through and find some of these things, or maybe it's broken out over telecons. I'll have to give it some more thought. But thanks for bringing it up.
Mhm.
Do we have any other comments or questions?
Is anybody interested in going to the GEM meeting to give demos? I mean,
Yeah, I think PySpeed-S is probably going to be in on that.
okay. Yeah, I mean, like I say, you guys are the poster child for getting people into the tutorials and crib sheets and the ramp up stuff. So,
I tend to go to those meetings more often than not, at the GEM meeting especially.
right.
Um, So I will likely be there, but you never know.
Right. Yeah, I've been doing the CDAR meeting just to kind of spread it out. Bob Weigel often goes to the GEM meeting. This year they were joint, so that was fun. So we'll try to cover most of the major ones, but we may just try it with GEM this year just to see how it goes. If it's popular, then we can add it to other meetings.
Yeah, I'm excited to see this PyHC in the wild.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, thanks again, John, for your update. And I see we have Alex on. I know we were meant to have a, oh my goodness, a PySat update. I'm realizing now Angeline was meant to give it, but she's been under government shutdown and on mandated vacation, if you will. So I think we'll have to push that presentation to a different day. But in the meantime, Alex, if you're ready, we'd love to see a presentation on the USRC conference.
I should be ready. I'm going to try to share this. I have like a really wide screen, so hopefully it doesn't get too weird in the sharing, but let's see. Okay. Let's see. Also coffee. All right. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah, that looks fine.
Okay, and I'm going to try to share it in slideshow mode. Is that still reasonable or is it too wide?
No, it's fine.
Okay. All right. So for those who don't know me, I'm Alex Kufos. I am a research software engineer at Stanford, working in the JSOC, which is the Joint Science Operations Center between Stanford and Lockheed, where we host all the solar dynamics observatory data, which I'm sure most of you already know about. But um, I'm also part of the steering committee for the USRC, which I'll talk a little bit about for those who are not familiar with the USRC yet. And yeah, and today I'm just going to be talking about the again the USRC a little bit, the USRC 25 conference, so the one that just happened this past October, with a couple of just snippets of things that you all might be interested in knowing happened, and then a little bit of discussion about USRC 26 and where that's happening next year. So to get started, the United States Research Software Engineering Association, or USRC, is a community-driven grassroots organization where we have a bunch of members ranging from those who are what they consider research or consider themselves research software engineers, even if that might not be an official title. Actually, if I can get a show of hands of who might not know what research software engineer is, I do have slides on that as well. I could go over a little bit, but for the most part, it's just it is just people who are doing software engineering specifically geared towards research, which I'm sure everybody here could consider themselves as one. It's also for those who are more identified as like allies, who might be doing more the pure science and not necessarily doing the software engineering aspects, but know how important that software engineering is and want to help, establish or help promote this idea of research software engineering. There we have four mission statements, one being community, second being advocacy, third being resources, and fourth is diversity, equity, inclusion. And I won't read into each of these different ones, but our main goals are obviously to try to build up a community that advocates for research software engineers, and doing that in a diverse, equitable, and inclusive environment, while also making sure that we provide as many possible resources for anybody who's interested in this field. We have members everywhere around the country, and world. As you can see here, we have people who are spread out mainly in the US, obviously, but also everywhere from Pakistan to Europe to China to Japan, Australia. So there's people everywhere. There are other RSC organizations also throughout the world. So there is actually one in Germany, one in the UK, and several others. People tend to, kind of collaborate with each other in various fields since they're generally working, not only in those regions. And more specifically, you can see here is kind of a heat map of all the members in the US so far. This is a little bit outdated. Also, we haven't updated the website yet, but there is also now San Francisco Bay Area regional group. So the yellow dots are either local or regional groups. So they're kind of a concentration of RSCs that want or end up trying to like hang out together and everything, trying to coordinate events in those regions. There's also one in North Carolina that just recently started. So we do need to update the map here, but this again kind of gives you a general idea of what our membership looks like. And I didn't explicitly put the numbers here, but or mention that the USRC is entirely free to join at the moment. We do have a paid sort of membership system for those who want to support it, in the sense that you can help try to get your organization to be part of the USRC and sponsor it for several little perks. You can find more information about that at the usrc.org. And if you have any questions about any of this stuff, of course, feel free to reach out to me. And also we have at the moment, I believe 3,700 members at the moment. So plenty of people to get to communicate with on our website or our Slack channel or Slack workspace and all the channels that are encompassed in there, and plenty of other ways to interact with other research software engineers. So on to the conference. So this year we had our third annual conference. This year it was in Old Town, Philadelphia, so right near where all the history of America kind of happened, or at least a good chunk of it. We had around 300 participants. I think it was more like 290, but I don't remember the exact numbers, but close to 300. We had 3 days of programming where the first and second days we had a keynote speaker each of those days, one being Reed Maxwell, who runs a large group that does a bunch of water studies around the country using some really cool software that they've developed. So there's a lot of research software engineering going on there, and very obviously specific towards a goal of understanding water areas in the U.S. And then Myra Cohen, who presented more on the kind of how do you approach testing in research and software engineering specifically. So both of those keynotes were really, really interesting. They talked a lot about, again, that's this bridge between research and software engineering that I thought were really, really interesting. Also, feel free if anybody has any questions, just raise your hand, interrupt me. I'm not in any, whatever people would like.
I got a random question.
Yeah.
You list 31 talks, 13 papers. What's the difference between a talk and a paper?
Yeah. Okay. So, so as you can see here, we have, I kind of listed several of the things that we ended up doing. Actually, posters, I can't remember if we had 60. I meant to check that number, but we had around 60. The difference between a paper and a talk is, so this isn't something that we commonly do in the science conferences where you actually submit papers to get kind of peer reviewed and then published in a like a journal or the conference proceedings or anything like that. In more of the software engineering conferences, they tend to do that sort of thing, or the engineering conferences. So a lot of the folks in the USRC kind of come a little bit maybe more from that engineering background. And so what we're trying to do as well is we have on this Zenodo link that you see here are all of these things that I mentioned, at least all that have uploaded, but we also have a papers proceedings, so where people have actually peer reviewed a bunch of submissions and then decided to accept, a certain number of papers. So it is a actual form of publication, although not in, our, the journal of AGU's journal or science or something like that, but it's a different way of getting some paper publications. So that's always an option. And then the talks are more what you're kind of seeing here in the upper right hand corner of somebody presenting on. In this case, they were presenting on RCs and what makes a good one. Yeah, so the talks are more the traditional thing that, you would just come up to the podium and speak to everybody. And papers are something that's actually submitted ahead of time and gets peer reviewed. Yes, Rebecca.
Hey, Alex, I had a question. So we also have the DASH meeting, so data analysis and software and heliophysics. I've screwed up the acronym, I'm sure. But I'm wondering, why did the USRSC conference add this paper feature, and what has been the interest and what has been the feedback on it?
That's a good question. I wasn't too specifically involved in the paper review process or the decision to do this, but I believe we've been doing this at least since the previous conference. And I don't recall if we did it on the first conference either. But one of the problems with research software engineer positions is that at the moment, or at least those who are doing the role, at the moment, we don't generally have a well-defined career track on what you should be doing to get, like kind of promotion or further along your career as a research software engineer. That being like metrics and things like that. Where in like science, a lot of the things are you want to get publications so that you can show that you're contributing to the community that way. For engineering, it's generally something more related to the code itself, maybe push or commits or something like that. Number of projects you worked on, things like that. But because we're kind of in this middle space, a lot of times people still want to see publications as well. So this allows folks one of the ways to be able to do that, to get a bit more recognition in the paper space, at least in the publication space. So that's, I think, one motivation for it. But if that doesn't exactly answer your question, or you're interested in more, I can definitely try to reach out to those who had started the paper track previously and get back to you on that.
Yeah, I'll shoot you an email. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions?
Can you put me on that, Rebecca? Because we've talked about having proceedings for Dash, but it's always been, oh, that's a big headache,
Yeah.
Sure, I'll throw a few people on the bus for that one. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, sounds good. And then the last thing to note here was the notebooks, which is similar-ish, so peer-reviewed notebooks for like not Juliet notebooks, but actually there might have been one, but for like Jupyter notebooks and stuff like that. And then we had, again, 4 parallel tracks. So there were 4 sessions going on at a time during the actual set, or the other sessions. So in the mornings we had the keynote speakers, and on the last day we kind of had a recap of everything that had happened, as well as moving forward and like updates from the sponsors and things like that. But throughout the rest of the days, we had these parallel tracks where we had some workshops going on there, the talks, and some birds of a feather sessions. And
Yeah.
Oops.
Was
Yeah.
it the last day when you guys also sourced ideas from the community, like on those poster boards next to the poster session of
Yeah.
what things people wanted to hear more about, and you did that for like an hour on the final day?
Yeah, great segue. So, some other stuff that we ended up doing during the conference that I didn't specifically mention on that first page. One of those things being what Julie just mentioned, which is the rapid access microtalks. So, I actually forgot to put the picture here of the board where people were rating this, but what we try to do every year, at least traditionally starting the previous conference at 24, we have the community write down ideas of talks that they would like to give that they only have 5 to 7 minutes to present. So kind of like lightning talks. We call them rapid access micro talks, and people put their ideas on or their title that they would like to talk about on a board, and everybody gets these stickers that they get, I think 3 is what we did this year, and you get to vote on the 3 that you would like to hear presented. So on the last day of the conference, we ended up doing that after, I believe it was after the sponsors were able to talk. And yeah, so that was kind of cool. It gives people an ability to have a little bit more fun with um, with giving a presentation without having to be too overly prepared or spending all this time on a bunch of slides. They can just, potentially have one and just chat about something that they're really passionate about. There was actually a really good one, I thought, about using Quarto for doing scientific documentation and actually writing their whole dissertation with it, which I thought was really interesting. The person who presented that has essentially said that they don't think that they would suggest it for somebody else at this point in time, but it seems like again, a cool little way of potentially doing science public or science documentation and publications in the future, at least in some capacity. And yeah, anyway, and then we had throughout the program or throughout the conference, we had a student program that was hosted by Sustainable Horizons Institute, where they had a mentor-mentee system going on throughout the conference. I believe there was about 25 or so participants who took part of that. There was an opening reception on the first day, or sorry, the evening before the conference, just to allow people to start to, register or not register, but get their sign in to the conference, get their badges, and talk with people, and just have some snacks and drinks before getting ready for the conference the following day. Again, I mentioned the sponsored talks, the rapid access micro talks. We had a poster reception on the first evening, Monday night, where again we had around 60 posters, and people were able to mingle and ask questions about those posters. And then we also, this was a bit bougie, but this year we had our conference dinner on the Mushalu, which is a boat in a permanently moored boat in the moored in the river there, and it was, yeah, it's 4 masts, just kind of cool. It was sponsored by Dell and SHI, um, and they, yeah, were able to reserve the whole thing, which we didn't think, or I didn't know was going to happen. And it was just a really fun way for people to kind of hang out. And as you can see down here in the bottom right, they even had like saxophonists, and they had a live DJ and a whole bunch of other stuff going on. So there was people I thought had a lot of fun with that. And then some of the talks that talks and workshops that happened that I thought might pique people's interests. Where there was one that was hosted by the student program committee, where they had a panel of research software engineers discussing how research software engineering and research software engineers exist at different institutions and across different domains. So that was cool for those who were trying to learn a little bit more about how things happened at other institutions. There were other talks also throughout the week on similar things, but not necessarily a career panel. We had some stuff about workshops, such as the one about trying to make data more resilient for the future. A bunch of talks about research software engineering practices. There was a good, interesting talk that I went to that I thought was something that I wasn't necessarily expecting. There was a person who was presenting specifically on how Fortran is actually still very relevant in today's modern software engineering ecosystem, not just in the sense of, legacy code, but actually using it to do some things that you might not even realize that Fortran is capable of doing, just because so many people have kind of went more towards, Python, C or C++, and, more object-oriented languages and stuff. So it was really interesting getting to see all these various conversations around how people are using software engineering practices throughout their careers and at other institutions. And there was also a live demonstration and discussion at about JOSS, the Journal of Open Source Software, which was also sadly I didn't get a chance to go to that, but I heard was really good. And then just a couple of metrics and stuff that we took. So we had a survey that we had try to get everybody to do. We ended up, I think, having 49 participants responding out of the close to 300. So got to work on our response rate, but overall, still pretty good response rate. But so we had overall really positive, overwhelmingly positive satisfaction of the conference. I honestly, I didn't remove this one because I think it was a mistake. I looked through their other comments and everything was very positive. So I think they might have accidentally put that as a 1 versus a 5. But essentially, everybody said it was either very good or overwhelmingly good. So really high positive experience participating in the comment. Again, another way of asking it was, would you recommend the conference to a colleague? And 100% of those who responded said yes. Pretty much everybody except for one said that they would attend again next year. So those are all good things to hear. We had asked people what they felt were the most beneficial parts of the conference for them. It turned out a lot of people really appreciated having the conference meals. So one of the things I didn't specifically mention, but we were providing both breakfast and lunch each of the days. So that allowed people to get together again and chat just more casually about various things, while also not having to worry about finding food throughout, the area in between sessions. So that was overwhelmingly something that people enjoyed. They also really appreciated the workshops and pretty much everything on here. It seems that we still might need to figure out a little bit more about how to really benefit from the sponsor presentations. But yeah, overall, I mean, even those people pretty much preferred or enjoyed. So everything went really well in terms of the individual components. Sorry. We asked a couple of questions about things that you agree or disagree with. For, again, the most part, everything was very positive. People met a lot of new people, learned something new, enjoyed the conference environment, it being very inclusive. The one thing that seems like we might just want to think a little bit more about was the logistics of the conference, working for everybody, and that kind of also leads into the accessibility needs. So for, again, overall, everybody was very positive about how the conference layout and everything worked for them, but there were some that still needed a little bit more. So we got to make sure we can work on that a bit more. And then just a cool little word cloud of some things that people found valuable, mainly community, building their careers more, learning new things, the science, valuable. It's just a lot of great things that people got out of this conference. Okay, and before I move on to the next thing, does anybody have any questions on the 25 conference? How much more time do I got? Okay, a couple of minutes. All right, so last slide before questions, overall questions. So next year's conference is going to be in the San Francisco Bay Area. We haven't 100% determined the location and dates yet, but we're looking at, it's looking like we might be more towards the San Jose area. And we're thinking late-ish October, around the 20th or so. But again, that might change a little bit, where there's ways for you to participate now if you're interested. We're still working on figuring out those who are going to be part of the various committees that we have for sponsoring or for running the conference. So since this is an entirely volunteer organization, all of the conference happens by those who are members, and they help actually organize the conference in all various things. So we're looking for people who want to work more on the logistics side, those who want to come up with that program on like what talks get presented, what workshops, birds of a feather things, the posters, things like that. We're looking for people who are interested in finding sponsors for the conference, who would be working directly with our executive director, Sandra, to find and communicate with various sponsors. We're hoping to do a student program again this year, so we're looking for people who would like to help organize and participate in that, as well as community engagement for the whole conference, and communications to make sure people are aware that this is happening. If you're interested in participating in any of the committee space, scan the QR code over here, or use the form link below. I can share these slides later with everybody. And also, or just go to the website. It's also on the website there. And then if you want to just keep in touch, feel free to reach out. And there should be a way to join the mailing list in there, and look out for anything that mentions hashtag USRC26, and you should be able to find it on social media. Although we don't have a ton of posts yet, but hopefully those will be ramping up when we get our communications committee. So, and I did not mention, but if you have any questions about this specifically, definitely reach out to me. I'm one of the chairs who are running the conference this coming year, along with Keith Beatty, who works at Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. So, yeah, and that's it. Any questions? Saw there were some conversations going on in chat, but I think they might have been mostly between everybody. So if there was a question in there that I didn't answer, please let me know.
Most of
Well, I
them
think that
Googling over the organization. It's like, ooh, we could do that for Dash.
Yeah.
yeah. So I'm hoping to get the Dash Planning Committee and the relevant people on the USRC Workshop Planning Committee together, so we can cross pollinate a bit better.
Yeah, I know there was some conversation about potentially like co-locating one of these years, and this would have been a great time to do it, since I'm part of the chair, but or one of the chairs, but like, yeah, we should definitely talk about that a little bit more to see if that is something that we can do. Coincidentally, again, this is not set in stone yet, but the location that we're looking at and the dates that we're looking at, if we do choose that one and that time, uh, PyTorch will actually be having a conference in the conference center that's attached to the venue at the same or the first 2 days of that week, and then we would be having ours following that, or actually maybe it was Tuesday and Wednesday. But anyway, so I thought that was kind of coincidental that there might be people from PyTorch that might be able to just like stick around longer or something. So again, if we can do this in some capacity, maybe next year with Dash, it would be a cool thing to look into.
Yeah.
Well, for Dash next year, we're slated to be hosted in Ireland because we alternate between the US and, well, North America-ish and European
Good
side.
point.
But so it would be the 27 that we would talk about. There are now is the time for people to propose to host Dash for 27. That's open. I don't know who would propose though. What do you think, Alex?
I don't. I'm not sure. We'll have to talk about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sure we'll find a really good venue for everything. How many people generally come to Dash?
That's a John Vandergriff
Yeah,
question.
we get about 100 in person.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe we were expecting more, but then this year was kind of a travel
Yeah.
nightmare with things being canceled.
Yeah. I was hoping to attend too, and yeah, even had the option kind of last minute, but just, with the time and everything else going on, it just sadly was not as convenient as it should have been.
No, if it was 1 week later, I would not have been able to go because they put in restrictions at our organization to try and save funds and resources for travel. So we just lucked out to be able to go, but a lot of people did not. So
Right. Yeah, hopefully next year will be much, much better.
yeah. And I forget, someone's asking in the chat, when is Dash next year? Because
We
uh,
we got that one answered. It's early October, right? 5 to
it
9.
was early. Okay.
Yeah, 5 to 9 October. That was my first thing when I realized USRC is still in October, but you guys are doing it late this time. We've swapped places.
Yeah, exactly. We were, I think, originally kind of shooting for early but yeah, then we ended up yeah. Again, we'll see what happens. We still haven't finalized any venues, but the one that we are looking at would be late October.
That'd be lovely if you want some Helio participation.
Yeah. Yeah, I would love more Helio participation. I do know some of you are already in the USRC and on the Slack, so that's great. And anybody, again, if you want to join, it's totally free. Just go to the website at the bottom there, us-rc.org/join, or just the website. There's a button in the top right, but yeah.
Beautiful. Well, we're out of time for more questions, but I might ping you. I'm curious about, you mentioned a mentor-mentee system throughout the conference for students, which could be something interesting. We could we do a Dash too, but
Yeah.
I'll hear more details, but no time right now.
Yeah.
I'll ask.
Yeah, cool.
That's great. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks,
for
Alex.
letting me present. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. If you want to reach out to Alex, join the USRC Slack. I highly advise everyone just join USRC anyway.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I don't think I put my email in here, but actually I did at the very beginning. It's akufos at pretty much any of the things. sun.stanford.edu, stanford.edu, gmail.com, all the things.
Awesome. Thanks, Alex.
Thanks.
All right, John, do you want to go ahead and kick off your part of the FEP reminder, since I know you got a jet?
I was just having that moment of like, wait, who is doing this? So I don't have slides. The short is that we have scheduled for Wednesday discussion and hopefully voting on a number of standards related issues. The discussion is in GitHub right now. I threw links into the meeting notes for each of them. You can also just go to our standards repository and poke through, but that kind of points you at the active stuff. And so the things that were like right up against voting wise would be Sean on adopting spec 0 and Julie's on tiering. So I'll not talk too much to those. There's been an updated licensing one that's been there for quite a while and would really be good to have a vote. There's also one on documentation, kind of capturing a discussion from last fall meeting that, vote would be nice, but mostly I just want to get more input. Things have been fairly quiet about these, and so my hope is that by putting concrete stuff out and saying, hey, there's going to be a vote, that encourages people to take a look. And then there's also just general things that have come up about the FET process, in case people want to talk about that. So this is mostly a warning that that's going to happen. And please, if you're able, read, engage in comments in GitHub if you can, but we will be having further discussion on Wednesday.
Yeah. Thanks for the quick advert. I feel like I had a thought that I wanted to say, and now it just flew into the ether. So hear more on Wednesday on FEPs. Oh, we'll also be reviewing FEP 1, a conversation between John and I. We realized in FEP 1 we agreed to have an annual review of FEP 1. I don't know that we've done that, so we're going to officially start that. So look forward to that. If there's time remaining also in the conversation on Wednesday, we can talk various PyHC governance things, bring back up idea of some kind of steering committee, that kind of thing, if need be. Do we need to update? Basically anything. That'll be the time to bring it up then, if we have remaining time after talking FEPs.
Yep, and totally take the opportunity to discuss in the Slack as well, whatever venue works best. The nice thing about the GitHubs, it's a record, but you can kick the football around for a while in Slack. It's always nice.
Very true. Oh, and also I think as far as all the votes go, everything's pretty much a first vote, except for the spec 01, right, Sean? That's the second vote?
Correct.
Yeah.
Cool. So as far as the first votes, technically we can make changes up until the time we vote, but not after. See you, John. Cool. Were there any final wrap-up remarks?
Maybe just a question here about the FEP voting, or a comment. We had mentioned last time, when we voted on FEP 3 for the first time, that we might want to use GitHub approvals as a way to track approval for this upcoming one. So for FEP 3, I was kind of planning on having people log into the pull request in GitHub and hit the green approve check. Do you like that idea? Did you have any plans of using that for any of the other votes?
I hadn't thought that far ahead, to be quite frank, but I am a fan of, I'm a fan of that way because it seems more trackable.
Cool. Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
That was the only thought I had floating around in my head for this stuff.
Cool. All right. Does anyone else have a comment or thought?
We should send you our slides, is it?
Yes, please. As SunPy started talking, I realized I never asked for that. So please, this is my formal request for your slides.
Sure.
You actually don't even need to send them to me. If you go to the meeting folder, there should be presentations or slides or some folder named that. You can just drop them in there.
Okay, I'll do that.
We'll send out an email. Cool. All right. Well, I'll see you all again tomorrow. Same time, same place. Hopefully we'll hear a dash out brief from Veronica, who took some really great notes here at last on the meeting. And I'm hoping that generates some conversation just about the meeting in general. She is out sick today, so that may have to get pushed. And then we'll hear a couple different topics from Helio data as well as the Helio Physics Foundation model. So get excited and see you then.